What is 187.5? SuspectSky here. I want to do a brief overview of where we're at with the phenomenon known as fast radio bursts. This is going to be a quick video. What you can see here is an example of a fast radio burst. It is a highly energetic burst of energy far above the background radiation noise that we normally would expect from a radio signal coming from deep space. What you can see here, this sloping line, represents dispersion measure, which is the measurement of when the higher frequencies exhibited here arrive versus the lower frequencies exhibited by the lower right-hand corner here. The distance between those two is a measurement of dispersion measure, and it's a way to gauge the distance at which these signals originated from. So FRBs have been in the news lately. Have scientists solved the mystery of this repeating radio signal from deep space? Well, no, they actually haven't. This is yet another example of clickbait. The true source remains unknown. The best hypothesis for natural origin that we have continues to be neutron stars in sort of a black hole environment. This has been true for a long time, and it continues to be true today. Not saying that it's not true, but this is sort of an old theory rehashed in a new way to explain the repeat signal, of which there are two examples, and we're going to get to that. Another key point here is that what they did is they used two properties of the signal, Faraday rotation and linear polarization, to determine that it originated from a highly energetic electromagnetic environment, likely produced by the interaction between a neutron star and a black hole. Problem with that is the signal could easily have just passed through such an environment, not necessarily originated from such an environment. And this isn't the first time that we've detected such Faraday rotation and linear polarization. Actually, the signal, I can't remember the name of the FRB, but actually the FRB that first we detected these qualities was the FRB that put kind of a clinch on the question of, were these FRBs originating within our own Milky Way galaxy and perhaps passing through some kind of special medium that gave them the impression that they were being produced way outside of our galaxy. The detection of an FRB with linear polarization and Faraday rotation kind of put the nail in the coffin on that theory that they were being produced locally, and now we know they are being produced extragalactically. So this is not the first time we've detected such qualities, so I'm not quite sure why this article is getting so much press, but it is, and I wanted to kind of just analyze a little bit of where we're at with FRBs. So this is the first 11 or 12 or so FRBs, and you can see that they're all multiples of 187.5. What that means is the dispersion measurement of these FRBs as we detected them, which is a measurement of distance. The distance at which these FRBs originated from were all equally spaced multiples of 187.5. You can see there 2 times 187.5, 3, 4, 5 times 187.5, which would highly suggest that these are artificial in origin because they are evenly spaced throughout the universe and being generated. Here's a list of all fast radio bursts detected to date, and you can see that there are 15 repeat bursts here, there are 10 repeat bursts here, there's also the double pulse here. So check this out. This is all sort of the raw data that we have on fast radio bursts, and you can see here the detection of linear polarization here was detected in April 18th, 2015. So this is not the first time we've seen a linear polarization. We've seen it again here, August 7th, 2015. And then now again, the latest news related to 12/11/02, November 2nd, 2012, the repeat signal. Linear polarization is not new news, despite what the clickbait wants you to think. But what I wanted to focus on here is the SETI project came up with this concept of focusing on the hydrogen line, which happens to be the frequency at which hydrogen resonates on the radio spectrum, which happens to be 1420 megahertz. So convincing of an area to focus on that no Earth broadcasts are allowed to happen at this radio frequency anymore, because SETI is looking for alien extraterrestrial signals coming in at this frequency. And the idea is that one advanced civilization, us, has come up with the idea that perhaps we need to look at a specific frequency for broadcasts from other civilizations like us. And if we assume that they are an intelligent species, we assume that they're going to look for simple, fundamental truths in nature, such as the hydrogen line, and that's an area that we should focus our search on. Lo and behold, we found something. So we said, you know what, we're going to focus at the hydrogen line, we're going to look at 1420 megahertz. Lo and behold, we found the WOW signal. This is a very famous, I believe, 1970s event that occurred whereby a massively powerful energetic signal was picked up, way above background radiation noise. It never repeated. And you know, the argument about whether repeat and non-repeat is applicable when trying to determine extraterrestrial signals continues to be a very hot topic today. We don't have time tonight to go into it. I'd love to, and actually we're going to go more into it at the OTF conference coming up. But yes, we a priori, so we predicted a frequency to look at, and we found an interesting signal. And that signal happened to look similar to an FRB, a highly energetic spike in energy. And we actually were able to find out where this signal originated from. So this is from the Sagittarius constellation. So the WOW signal originated from an area within these two red bands. And the reason why there's sort of two red bands is it actually has to do with the structure of the telescope and its field of view. But we're able to determine that the signal itself, the WOW signal, came from these two red bands, somewhere within there, from the Sagittarius constellation. And then we had this idea, well, the hydrogen line is interesting, but maybe we need to look even more artificial. So what would be the most artificial signal we could think of at the time? This is in the early days of SETI. It happened to be, well, why don't we take the number pi? Pi is sort of a mathematical concept. It's a never-ending number. It really doesn't have a place in true reality. It's sort of this mathematical construct. It's a never-ending number. So let's take pi and times it by the hydrogen line. And not only that, let's take 2 pi times the hydrogen line. And let's see what we find. Lo and behold, again, a priori, they made a prediction of where to look, and they found an extremely powerful signal. So you can see here, this is referred to as the second WOW signal. It's an extremely energetic spike, similar to the FRB, similar to the WOW signal, and they were able to detect a very unusual radio signal as sort of a hypothesis. We predicted we're going to find a signal here, and we actually did, just like the WOW signal. And we can see here's some math. This is what's referred to as a transcendental number, and even the SETI program itself said if we picked up a signal at one of these really weird pi times the hydrogen line frequencies, it would clearly signify its artificial origin. However, in both cases, both WOW 1 and WOW 2, they never repeated. And again, this argument about repeat versus non-repeat, the perspective has kind of changed today. Repeating signals today tend to mean a natural source. So you think of something like pulsars, even FRBs. We have a FRB that's repeated 20, 30 times, and it's still considered natural off the bat. So that kind of shift in perspective is a little interesting to me. And then Stephen Hawking comes around and says, you know what, it's not a good idea that we be broadcasting our location. We shouldn't be broadcasting that we exist. The idea that aliens are nice is kind of a naivete at its worst. And you know what, everything that Stephen Hawking thinks is that an advanced civilization would do everything it could to hide its existence. We should try to avoid contact. And this is an interesting premise. So this is one of the most educated, one of the smartest people out there in physics. And he's coming up with this idea that, you know what, maybe extraterrestrials don't want to just kind of broadcast and announce themselves out there, and we probably shouldn't be either. But this kind of really shook my interpretation and my analysis of some of the events going on lately. So here's a breakdown of fast radio bursts. These are all fast radio bursts detected to date. You can see their dispersion measure here in the leftmost column, divided by 187.5, and here is the multiple of 187.5 that they find themselves at. So this is that interesting sort of evenly spaced beacons across the universe. All of them are a safe bet, assuming some rounding, but all of them are a safe bet within the 187.5 multiple. A key point here is that dispersion measure is not an exact measurement. So perhaps the signal passed through a little bit more interstellar medium on its way here, which might skew the results. So you want to keep that in mind. I've highlighted here the purple columns, which continue to be kind of the anomalies. They're not really close enough to the half multiple or the exact multiple. Not quite sure what to do with them. The blue highlighted ones here are what we refer to as the double pulse. The double pulse, we're not sure exactly where it originated from. There was some kind of data skewing going on with it, so I left that kind of in the unknown category. But the vast majority of these appear at an evenly spaced distance from Earth, so it's pretty fascinating. It's so fascinating that Harvard scientists are even starting to theorize that fast radio bursts might be responsible for alien space travel. In a nutshell, the theory is that an energetic burst of radio energy might be able to propel kind of solar sail-based interstellar probes. And what we might be picking up is the cutoff here, kind of the spillage over the sail as this sort of is in our field of view for a millisecond as the galaxy rotates around itself, or the universe and all the multiple galaxies rotate all around each other. We might have a 1 millisecond or less field of vision whereby we might pick up this tremendous burst of energy that's propelling these interstellar probes. Something else is interesting is that a number of physicists in 2014 discussed we could use fast radio bursts as a way to probe ancient cosmic history. Something that I've been thinking about and working on is it possible that Type 3 civilizations and above might be able to build telescopes, of a sense, using fast radio bursts in a similar way to probe and explore the galaxy of its own, and maybe we're picking up those kinds of transmissions. So here's a picture of a radar signal of near-Earth objects. So these are all near-Earth asteroids that have the potential to impact the planet. How do we create this image? We use radio telescopes. Essentially, telescopes will scan the sky using radio frequencies, mapping very similar to the way that an air traffic controller radar will, to determine if there are any asteroid threats out there. And then this got me thinking, well, Stephen Hawking is talking about how civilizations might not want to broadcast their exact location, but I started thinking, maybe it might be interesting if, what if an alien civilization would embed interesting mathematical signals into their asteroid avoidance radars as a way to say, hello, we're here, without really releasing their location. And we wouldn't know where they were because it's almost never that these radar signals will, that these radar tracking systems would scan and sweep the same part of the sky within, say, a lifetime. So it's possible to embed interesting mathematical properties in a radio signal that sweeps across the sky and feel confident that you're never going to repeat and provide that sort of confirmation signal. Something else interesting about FRBs is that 187.5 and all the dispersion measures detected to date happen to match Pythagorean harmonics. So you can see here 187.5, 375, 369. It's quite interesting that the pattern of 187.5 not only is multiples, but also seems to match Pythagorean harmonics. It just seems to lend itself to even more to be of an artificial origin than one would expect from, say, a naturally occurring, say, black hole collapsing a neutron star. And you can see here, if you double check the fast radio bursts and their dispersion measures, you can confirm that yes, the Pythagorean harmonics do exist when you compare dispersion measure here in this column, and you compare the 3, 6, 9 multiple kind of Fibonacci sequence stuff going on with it. It's very interesting. But what's even more interesting is that when we were looking at this data, I had the idea that 187.5 might relate to micro and macro states of a thermodynamic model. And here's sort of a long description of it. What it boils down to is 187.5 happens to be the lowest macro state of the simplest thermodynamic model that we know of. So in a system of two Einsteinian solids, one with 300 oscillations, another solid with 200 oscillations, sharing a total unit or a total amount of energy of 100 units, the simplest macro state solution to that problem, to that thermodynamic model, is 187.5. And what even becomes even more fascinating is, could this potentially be a message? So just like we look at the hydrogen line as a way for SETI to guesstimate the best place to look for alien signals, perhaps extraterrestrial civilizations are also guesstimating what might be a fundamental truth, such as the frequency at which hydrogen resonates. What might be a fundamental truth that we can broadcast out there in a safe way, one that doesn't repeat often, although the repeating FRB continues to be a mystery. One that doesn't repeat often, that we can safely broadcast it out, that would show intelligence. And while the hydrogen line to us might be the simplest thing we could broadcast or even look at, perhaps whatever culture, society, whatever social effects this extraterrestrial civilization has, perhaps thermodynamics to them means that's the more simple thing, more fundamental truth to broadcast, 187.5. And here's a problem for those who like math. Feel free to dig into this, but this is sort of a mathematical explanation of how all that works. But the question then comes, is it a message? So why the number 187.5? Well, if you dig a little bit into thermodynamics and macro states, what the definition of the least likely macro state means it's the least likely to occur in nature. So that has some kind of interesting implications to it. Are they broadcasting a number that essentially means this is the least likely number to exist naturally in a thermodynamic model, and we think you need to pay attention to it? Does that constitute a message? I don't know. It seems sharply analogous to what we do with the hydrogen line with the SETI program. So according to statistical thermodynamics, this is the least likely solution to a thermodynamic model. It continues to be a very interesting mathematical signal that we've received and continue to receive. Could it be their hydrogen line? And then, combining that with Hawking's caution, it's not a good idea to broadcast our existence. So maybe the best that an advanced civilization could do is say, let's embed an interesting mathematical property into our asteroid avoidance radars. We're going to sweep the sky every lifetime with it, and basically leave a puzzle and say, figure it out. And if you find out that it's pretty interesting, if you can understand it, if you can figure out that it has to do with thermodynamics, then at least you know that there's somebody out there. Just embedding their signals. I don't know, but I think ultimately it's the goal may be to say, yes, we're out there. Now, all this being said, it's all hypothetical, but it is based in fact. You can read the clickbait articles and try to say to yourselves, they figured out FRBs. No, they haven't. They've been saying that since 2015. We do not know what causes FRBs, despite the clickbait articles. We have some guesses about what naturally might cause them to do it, all of which have been dwindled down to essentially neutron stars orbiting around black holes. There are some extremely interesting mathematical properties to FRBs that kind of hint against such natural origin theories. And not only that, what we're going to be talking about at the next OTF is that there are environments that can be produced by alien civilizations that mimic such high electromagnetically energized environments that do not necessarily need black holes. So at the next OTF 2018, and I'm going to shamelessly plug it, my talk is going to be the 0.5s. We are here. I'm going to look at some essentially breakthrough technologies that have to do with moving humanity from a type 0 to a type 1 and ultimately to a type 2. And what these cutting edge technologies, what they have to do to the general public is shift our perception about what we look for for ET. So in our search for extraterrestrial life, we can look at breakthrough technologies, and we need to shift our perspective of what exactly we're looking for. I mean, SETI is from the 1970s, and we have a lot more understanding of some breakthrough technologies. So how do we adjust our search is going to be a big topic of the next OTF, and how all this applies to the Fermi paradox. So I'm going to talk about the G infrared all sky telescope survey looking for type 3 civilizations that produce waste heat. We're going to talk about how all that applies to the Fermi paradox and how we need to shift our paradigm of understanding to a more modern concept of technology and what we expect to find with highly advanced ET civilizations, including what FRBs might be. And of course, I like to always end my talks with a surprise insight into what the type 5 civilization might be. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this brief one-on-one, and everybody have a good night, and hopefully we'll see you at OTF 2018, and if not, I'm going to be posting the conference here on the channel. Have a good night.